the CEO is sharpening the axe, we don't stand next to the tree. Then came the junior analyst incident. Kevin was 22, wore Patagonia vests exclusively, and had the intellectual depth of a puddle in a heat wave. He was Carrington's new pet project, an innovation ninja or some such nonsense title. I was in the communal kitchen, staring at the espresso machine like it might tell me the secrets of the universe, when Kevin bounced in. "Hey, Brittany, quick question," he chirped, oblivious to the fact that I was radiating do not disturb energy. "I'm scrubbing the metadata on the slide deck for the Intercalyx due diligence team. Alex said to make sure all the IP attributions are clean. I saw your name on the legacy docs, but I can just find and replace that with Corivia Proprietary Holdings, right? Just to keep it consistent?" My blood ran cold. Not hot, cold. Liquid nitrogen cold. "Kevin," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Show me the deck." He pulled up his iPad. "Yeah, see? Alex put a note here. Assert full corporate ownership. Remove founder liabilities." I looked at the slide. It was a diagram of my neural net architecture, the specific recursive loop that made the whole thing work. And right there in bold Helvetica it said, "Property of Corivia Inc., wholly owned subsidiary." He wasn't just erasing me from the history books. He was legally claiming he owned the land my house was built on. Under the terms of our license, Corivia had exclusive usage rights, not ownership. Claiming ownership to a third party like Intercalyx wasn't just a lie, it was a material breach of contract. It was fraud. "Interesting," I said. "Kevin, could you email that to me? I just want to double-check the formatting." "Sure thing," he said, tapping away. "You're the best, Brit." Poor Kevin. He had no idea he just handed me the ammunition to execute his boss. I went back to my desk and waited for the ping. There it was. Intercalyx Pitch V4 Final PPTX. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into Carrington's office and flip his standing desk. I opened my personal email, never use corporate email for the kill shot, folks, and forwarded the file to my lawyer, a woman named Sarah who makes great white sharks look like goldfish. My message was 3 words, "Timestamp this breach." Sarah replied in 2 minutes, "Received. Clause 7 violation confirmed. Are we pulling the trigger?" I stared at the blinking cursor. Not yet. If I pulled the license now, the deal would collapse and Carrington would spin it as me being a difficult woman who sabotaged the company out of spite. I needed him to commit. I needed him to stand in front of the world and lie so boldly that there was no walking it back. I needed the humiliation to be absolute. I typed back, "Wait, let him dig the grave deeper." The next few days were a blur of surreality. I sat in meetings where they discussed the future of the product without asking the person who built it. I watched Carrington strut around the office, high on the fumes of a $500 million deal. He bought a gong, a literal brass gong. Every time they cleared a hurdle with the due diligence team, he'd bang it. Gong. Legal review complete. Gong. Financial audit passed. Every bang was a nail in his coffin. He was so confident. He thought I was just a nerd he could bully into silence. He thought my silence was submission. He didn't understand that for an engineer, silence isn't empty. Silence is processing power. Silence is the system compiling the code before the execution command runs. He called me into his office late on a Thursday. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the glass walls. Didn't offer me a seat. "Brittany," he said, leaning back in his air-owned chair, fingers steeped like a villain in a bad movie. "We need to talk about the transition." "Transition?" I asked, playing dumb. "The deal is closing next week," he said. "Intercalyx wants a fresh start. And frankly, your salary is heavy. We're going to need you to sign a release, a graceful exit. We'll give you 3 months severance and you sign over any residual IP claims, just to tidy up the paperwork. And if I don't," he smiled that shark smile again, "then we terminate for cause. Insubordination, failure to adapt. We'll bury you in legal fees until you're selling that patent of yours for scrap metal." He was threatening to fire me. He was threatening to fire the patent holder. It was so stupid I almost laughed. "I'll think about it," I said. "You have until the all-hands meeting tomorrow," he said. "Don't make this ugly, Brittany." "I wouldn't dream of it," I said. I walked out of his office. I didn't go home. I went to the server room, the hum of the cooling fans wrapping around me like a blanket. I sat there for hours just watching the lights blink. Green, 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 everything was working perfectly. Tomorrow, the lights were going to go red. The main conference room at Corivia was affectionately known as the Fishbowl. It was a glass-walled monstrosity in the center of the open plan office, designed to promote transparency, but actually serving as a theater for public anxiety. If you were getting yelled at in the fishbowl, everyone saw it. If you were crying in the fishbowl, everyone saw it. Today, the entire company was crammed in there, or hovering around the edges outside the glass, for the strategic alignment all hands. Alex Carrington stood at the head of the table, flanked by the board of directors who had flown in for the pre-acquisition celebration. It looked like a row of vultures in Italian suits picking at the catered croissants. Carrington was practically vibrating. He had the energy of a man who believes he is about to become a god. I stood in the back, leaning against the wall. I wore my usual lab armor, dark jeans, a black blazer, boots. I wasn't dressed for a funeral, but I was definitely dressed for demolition. Team, Carrington started, his voice projecting without a microphone. We stand on the precipice of history. Intercalix Ventures has recognized what I've been telling you for 6 months. Corivia is not just a company. It is a paradigm shift. A few people clapped, mostly the marketing team. My engineers looked at their shoes. They knew the tech was solid, but they also knew the paradigm shift was mostly smoke and mirrors built on top of my hard work. To get here, Carrington continued, pacing the room. We had to make tough choices. We had to trim the fat. We had to pivot from a research-first mindset to a growth-first mindset. He stopped pacing and turned his body slowly, deliberately, until he was facing me. The room went silent. The air got sucked out of the fishbowl. Brittany, he said. He didn't use my last name, just Brittany, like a disappointed father. You've been with us since the beginning. You wrote the original code, and for that we thank you. He paused for effect. This was it, the performance. But he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical hush, what got us here won't get us there. We need visionaries, not just technicians. We need people who understand that a patent is worthless if it doesn't sell. You've been resistant. You've held onto the old ways. You think like a scientist in a laboratory, not a businesswoman in the arena. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral. A stone mask. Let him talk, I thought. Let him put it all on the record. I offered you a generous transition package, Carrington said, lying through his teeth in front of 50 people. You refused. You threatened to hold the company hostage over technicalities. Murmurs rippled through the room. He was painting me as the villain, the greedy founder standing in the way of everyone's payday. So, he said, straightening his cuffs. Effective immediately, Brittany, your employment is terminated. For cause. Security will escort you out. He gestured to the door. Our 2 beefy security guards were already waiting. It was choreographed. He wanted this visual, the old guard being physically removed to make way for the new. I looked at the board. They were watching me with bored indifference. They didn't care who built the engine as long as the car sold. I looked at my team. Kevin, the innovation ninja, looked like he was going to vomit. Tyler, the sysadmin, gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. I pushed off the wall. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't launch into a monologue about how I invented the very air they were breathing. You're making a mistake, Alex, I said. My voice was quiet, but in the silence of that room, it carried like a gunshot. The only mistake, he sneered, was thinking we needed you this long. Your patent is company property, Brittany. Read your contract. Now get out. Read your contract. The irony was so rich it tasted like truffles. I picked up my bag. I walked past the table of vultures. I walked past Carrington, who was already turning back to the room, dismissing me like a gnat. I felt the eyes of every person in that room on my back. They expected me to fight. They expected a scene. Instead, I walked to the door. The security guard reached for my arm. I sidestepped him. I know the way, I said. I walked out of the fishbowl, through the open office, past the rows of desks where I had spent 5 years debugging, optimizing, and stressing. I walked to the elevators. As the doors closed, I saw Carrington raising a glass of champagne, laughing at something a board member said. He thought the game was over. He thought he had won. I pulled out my phone as the elevator descended. I opened the encrypted chat with Sarah. Brittany, he did it, public termination, for cause, and he explicitly claimed the patent is company property in front of the board. Sarah, he's dead. Brittany, execute the revocation. The 24-hour clock starts now. I walked out of the building and into the blinding California sun. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and eucalyptus. It smelled like freedom. I had 24 hours to wait. Then the world would burn. There is a specific kind of silence that follows a detonation. It's the sound of the shockwave traveling before the debris hits the ground. That was my life for the next 24 hours. I went home to my apartment in the Marina District. It's a clean space, minimalist, lots of white oak and slate, with a server rack in the closet that hums like a sleeping cat. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check LinkedIn to see the inevitable spin Carrington's PR team was putting out. Corivia streamlines leadership for next-gen growth. I could write the headline in my sleep. Instead, I made tea. I sat on my balcony watching the fog roll over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I visualized the email that was currently sitting in the inbox of Corivia's general counsel. Sarah had sent it at exactly 11:03 a.m. Subject: Notice of license revocation, immediate action required to General Counsel, Corivia Inc. CC. Board of Directors per Clause 14B of the Master License Agreement dated 5 years ago. Licensor, Brittany last name, hereby exercises the right to revoke all usage rights to patent hash US 99482B, the Corivia platform, due to material breach of contract, Section 7. False claims of ownership and termination of the founder without cause, Section 12. Founder protections. This revocation is effective 24 hours from receipt of this notice. At 11:03 a.m. tomorrow, Corivia Inc. must cease all operations utilizing the licensed technology or face immediate litigation for patent infringement. It was a kill switch. A legal EMP. Carrington wouldn't see it, not immediately. He was too busy drinking expensive scotch and high-fiving the investors. The general counsel, a man named Marcus who was perpetually overwhelmed, probably flagged it as urgent but wouldn't interrupt the party. They would assume it was a bluff. Desperate negotiation tactic from a disgruntled ex-employee. I poured a glass of wine, a nice Pinot. I watched the sun go down. Around 4 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler, the sysadmin. Tyler, vibes are weird here. Marcus from legal just ran into Alex's office looking like he saw a ghost. Alex is yelling, you good? I smiled. The shockwave had arrived. Brittany, I'm great, Ty. Just doing some gardening. Keep your head down. By 6 p.m. the first call came. It wasn't Carrington. He was too proud. It was Marcus. Brittany, his voice was tight, strained. We received a concerning document from your counsel. Hello, Marcus, I said, sipping my wine. I assume you mean the revocation notice. Look, let's not be rash, he said, trying for a conciliatory tone but sounding panicked. Alex was heated today. The termination, we can classify it as a layoff. We can boost the severance. Pulling the license? That's nuclear. You're destroying the company's value. The company has no value without my IP, Marcus. Alex made that clear today when he said my patent was company property. Since he seems confused about who owns what, I'm just clarifying the situation. Brittany, be reasonable. Intercolix is signing the deal on Monday. If this cloud is hanging over the IP, they'll walk. That sounds like an Alex problem, not a Brittany problem. I said you have 17 hours left. I hung up. I blocked Marcus's number. Then I saw Carrington's name flash on the screen. Alex Carrington. I let it ring. Once, twice. Then I sent it to voicemail. He called again and again. 11 times in 20 minutes. I imagined him in his office, tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead, staring at the phone. He was used to people folding. He was used to throwing money at problems until they went away. But he couldn't buy me. I didn't need his money. I had my patents, I had my dignity, and I had the absolute certainty that I was right. I ordered Thai food. I watched a documentary about deep-sea jellyfish. I slept like a baby. The next morning, I woke up at 7 a.m., 4 hours until the deadline. My phone was a graveyard of missed calls and frantic texts. Alex, pick up the phone. Alex, we need to talk. Alex, you're being childish. Alex, I'll sue you for tortious interference. Alex, Brittany, please, let's work this out. The desperation was delicious. It had a texture, gritty like sand, but I wasn't waiting for Alex. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for Intercolix. Because right about now, Sarah was sending a courtesy copy of the revocation notice to the buyer's legal team, just as part of standard due diligence disclosures. The bomb wasn't just under Corivia's chair. It was under the entire deal. At 9:30 a.m., the phone rang. Unknown number. Palo Alto area code. This is Brittany. Miss Brittany, a cool, unfamiliar voice said. This is David Sterling, lead counsel for Intercolix Ventures. We just received a document regarding the IP status of the Corivia platform. Do you have a moment? I smiled. For you, David, I have all day. David Sterling sounded exactly like a man who bills $1,200 an hour. His voice was smooth, devoid of emotion, and sharp as a scalpel. He wasn't interested in the drama. He was interested in the asset. Let me understand the timeline, Sterling said. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. You hold the primary utility patent for the diagnostic algorithm. You licensed it to Corivia 5 years ago. Yesterday, the CEO terminated your employment and asserted full ownership of said patent in a recorded meeting? That is correct, I said. He also violated the non-disparagement clause and the founder protection clause. My lawyer has the transcripts from the attendees. I see, Sterling said. There was a long pause, and the license revocation takes effect. In about 90 minutes, I checked my watch. 11:03 a.m. Miss Brittany, Sterling said, and his tone shifted slightly. More respectful now. Intercolix is prepared to deploy $500 million based on the premise that Corivia owns or has an irrevocable perpetual license to this technology. If that license is revoked, we are essentially buying a very expensive office lease and some Herman Miller chairs. I'm aware, I said. I built the tech, David. Without the algorithm, the machine is just a box of sensors that beeps randomly. Why wasn't this disclosed in the initial data room? He asked. Because Alex Carrington believes that if he ignores a contract hard enough, it stops existing, I said. He bet that I wouldn't blow up the deal because I have equity. He forgot that I care more about the integrity of my invention than I do about his stock price. Understood, Sterling said. Thank you for your candor. I need to make some calls. He hung up. I poured myself a second cup of coffee. The wait was almost over. Meanwhile, over at Corivia HQ, the situation had apparently devolved into Lord of the Flies, but with more Patagonia vests. Tyler was live texting me updates from the server room, which was the only safe zone left. Tyler, Alex is screaming at Marcus, like veins popping screaming. They're trying to find a loophole in the contract. Tyler, now he's calling the board. He's blaming you, says you're emotionally unstable and sabotaging the company. Tyler, dude, the Intercolix auditors just walked in. They looked pissed. I could picture it perfectly. The Intercolix team, suits, briefcases, dead eyes, marching into the glass fishbowl. Carrington trying to put on his charm, flashing that $1 million smile but sweating through his shirt. My phone rang again. It was Carrington. I answered this time. I wanted to hear it. Brittany, he sounded breathless. Thank God. Look, I've been talking to the board. We can fix this. We can. It's over, Alex, I said. It's not over. You're going to ruin everything. Do you have any idea how much money is on the table? For you too, your equity, my equity in a company that stole my work? I don't